And welcome to the the People's Perspective. And just to let you all know, we have outgrown that name, the Pensacola Perspective, and now we're going by the People's Perspective. So big changes, big guests. We had a big week last week. We want to say congratulations to Dwayne Crocker. He did win the BET's Race to the Stage, so he will be on Sunday Best this Sunday. So please check that out. I'm not exactly sure what time, but y'all keep him in your prayers and everything. And like I said, y'all like the page, subscribe to us on YouTube. And that's, again, the People's Perspective now. And if you like what you're seeing, more big things are coming on the way. Go to the tab, donate tab. Donate what you can, $1, 25 cents, $50, $50,000. It'd all be greatly appreciated. And today we have a special guest, Q the Poet. And he's a very known poet around the Gulf Coast region, and he's also revolutionary and an activist. And Q, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Hey, let's jump right into it, man. There's a lot of stuff going on within the Black community right now. I know you have seen a lot in your lifetime, and I know it's kind of being repeated on a different scale. It's the same thing, but just different situations. What do you think right now of the state of Black America?
Man, we in trouble, brother. We in trouble, and until we realize we're in trouble, the problem I see is, like you said, what you mentioned, it's the same troubles that we've always been in. It's just now we're more sedated, and I think not enough of us understand the trouble that we're in. In the '60s, it was a collective. They all knew that we were in some type of trouble. We might have all worked on different pages to get us toward this one goal of freedom, but right now it's like we're so divided that we don't really even have an understanding that we're in trouble. So that makes the trouble a little bit more serious, because the mass of us don't even understand what's really going on. They think it's these isolated pockets of incidences taking place. We want to isolate Michael Brown, we want to isolate Sandra Bland, but it's one big thing. The continuum is that they were both Black. And that's the part that we're having a hard time understanding. It didn't happen to me, but it did happen to us. Until all of us are free, none of us are free. And that's why I think we don't quite understand.
And as far as, I said earlier that, you have seen a lot of your lifetime. I know it's a lot of stuff you can't say, you can't speak on. So if I ask you a question that, you got a lot of stuff tied up and you can't speak on, just let me know. But can you give the people just a brief background, like in your past, the kind of work you have done, and you're very unsung for the work you have done, just to give them a little measure of what you've been doing.
Well, originally myself, I'm from Gary, Indiana, born in 1970. I was actually born in Memphis, Tennessee, but moved to Gary before I was 1 year old. Gary, Indiana I compare it to, on one of my first CDs, as a small version of Vietnam. My father's a Vietnam veteran, so his stories that he told me when he got back from Vietnam and what he saw in those 3 years he was in Vietnam, I compare that exactly to what I saw in my 20-something years living in Gary, Indiana. I lost about 14 friends in 1 year. My brother was killed. One of the men who played a big part in raising me was assassinated. So seeing nothing but death and violence for the majority of my life made me decide. My mom told me as early on in life to either be a part of the solution or part of the problem. So I wasn't going to sit there and just watch all of this carnage take place in front of me. So I decided to pick up where the Panthers left off, and we started a lot of programs. We started some watching programs from brothers who were coming home late at night. We would be up watching when the police came around to see if things were being done correctly. They were following the law, and we would allow them to go ahead and do what they had to do. But if not, we would cause some type of ruckus to let the community know that this is unjust and we need to come out and we need to protest against this. Me, myself, at 17, was assaulted by the police at 17 years old, was dragged out of a car with a friend of mine who was in the Air Force. He had a Blazer. Just want to share this little story. He had a Blazer, nice, looking at the time, in the early, mid to late 80s. Police pulled us both out on the sidewalk, split the seats, tore him up, looking for drugs. After the man showing him his material, showing him his paperwork that he's in the military, this is how I can afford this. But in their minds, Black men, Gary, Indiana, impoverished community, only way you got some money like this is if you're selling drugs. So this left a mark on my mind at 17 years old that, okay, no matter what, we just always going to be stereotyping, pigeonholed. So again, growing up with parents who are from the South, my mother and father both from Memphis, Tennessee, both right there when King was assassinated, constantly hearing stories about this. It just played a big part in my development and my growing years, and being mentored by brothers who were ex-Panthers or ex-Panther supporters, having to follow a certain program and direction. I just couldn't allow myself to just sit back idly and watch my people be done so wrong without having to do something about it. So I started many programs. I started a program for Black women who were battered. It's called Protecting Our Women, POW, helping sisters find some type of way to protect themselves against relationships that they got themselves into, but not allow themselves to be victims. You know what I mean? So it kicked off from there. So that went from that. And then shortly after I moved to Memphis, after my brother was killed in 1992, my brother was shot and killed after being in the city for about a month. It was still known as an unsolved mystery. We don't know who did it. It was been reports that police might have had something to do with it. He was killed with a public enemy jacket and a kufi on. So we were out both organizing in the streets, trying to stop drug dealers and gang members from just messing up their own communities, basically. So, and in those times, in the early 90s, you know, that wasn't the most favorable thing to do. You know, drug dealers don't want you stopping their money. Gang members don't want you stopping their progress. So it's kind of a bold thing to go against that grain. And when that happens, then sometimes they retaliate. So, but after seeing all of that, I just carried all that energy to Memphis, Tennessee when I moved to Memphis in '93. And it just kept on going. And I hooked up with the Nation and never officially joined the Nation of Islam, but I hooked up with brothers in the Nation. And we went on and started some more campaigns to kind of help break up some of this. If we can stop some of the violence that's going on in our communities, we can work on social programs to get things going. We just have to, which is basically the same thing that the Panthers did. They had to stop the violence first. They had to stop the black on black. And then they were able to implement these social programs. And whatever means you have to do that. It's not, you don't go in asking people who are bringing problems to your community to stop doing it. You give them options, you give them choices. You can either do this with us or you're gonna lose this anyway. So you have a choice, but it's not like you get to continue to do it while we're here. You either join us or you get out the community. As simple as that. And that's pretty much what Huey started. You know, you either leave or you can join up with us. And that's, you don't give people options when they bring in negativity into your society, into your community. You don't get them options. You know, you don't give them a choice. Or you can do this on Tuesdays and Thursdays. No, you have to stop completely, or we can stop you. It's just that simple. So things went on. So that's basically my background. And the writings came from that. Seeing so much carnage in my community, I had to just pick up my pen and use that as my weapon, as opposed to go out and either join what most of the people were doing, or just to sit back idle, because you can't straddle the fence. You know, you have to pick sides to be on. So the writings was like observations, and I used that to kind of be my launching pad to write down my ideas on what I wanted to do as a writer, and then take that from the paper to the streets and take it to that. And
your poetry, you mentioned that you have it on CD. How many CDs do you have out, and where can the people find your poetry at?
It's still blackseed.bandcamp.com.
Okay.
So that's where the latest two are. The newest one I just dropped in February. It's a dedication to my mother. I released it on the day she passed, February 22nd. So you can listen to the CD for free. You can purchase each poem for 99 cents, or you can buy the whole thing for $10. Now, if you do it with the PayPal account, that money, part of the proceeds go to a breast cancer research program back in Memphis, Tennessee. My mom died from breast cancer in 2006. So I still give money back to that particular program where she was able to benefit from while she was alive. So so it's all about giving back. I mean, that's what my whole life is centered around, is trying to give back, because again, it's no personal thing with me. It's never been personal, it's a collective. It's the Harriet Tubman Code. You know, I might be able to get over to a certain area, but I know that there's some people that I left behind. So I need to go back. It's my own life, how to go back and make sure that everybody can get to that same level. That's somewhat of a peaceful place until all of us collectively can get over here, and then we can find out a way to work on this liberation, this totality of liberation that we need to attain. So, but it's about going back as many times as we can to keep bringing more people out of this carnage that we live in.
And you mentioned the Nation of Islam. You mentioned Memphis, Tennessee, the site where Dr. King was assassinated. You know, back in those 60s, J. Edgar Hoover, as I know you already know, ran a successful campaign to stop the rise of the Black Messiah at that time, which was his fear, his biggest fear. and that was COINTELPRO, the counterintelligence program, which, you know, they say that played a big part in bringing down some of the Panthers, the King, and even worked successfully on the assassination of John F. Kennedy and his brother Robert. Or do you think the COINTELPRO is still being used today?
Oh, definitely. It never stopped. Yeah, they definitely never stopped it. It might be under a new name. Let me tell you this, the Patriot Act. When the Patriot Act came out in 2001 or prior to 2001, it was COINTELPRO's evil twin, you know, basically. So they're one and the same. They just keep changing names. We know the government has always done what they've done. I think the problem has been our mentality, thinking that things have changed. But the government has been very consistent on doing what they do. It's the old school plan that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. The plan ain't never been broke, so they haven't fixed it. It's still working. You know what I mean? It's still working. It's just our mentality behind it is different, I believe. I think we look at it differently now because we look at everything in the historical viewpoint. You know, our people, we think that, okay, that was then. Well, it's the same thing. You know, if we think that COINTELPRO ended with the assassination of the Panthers, well, what happened with the MOVE organization in the 1970s and the 1980s? You know, when they dropped the bomb on the MOVE family in Philadelphia in 1985. That was a part of COINTELPRO. These were a group of Black individuals who were speaking about freedom and change, and the government looked at it as a threat. And COINTELPRO's plan was to stop the rise of a Black Messiah. So those were Black Messiahs in our time, the times that we were all living in. So it's still going. It hasn't changed. It still hasn't changed.
Now, like the Panthers splashed on the scene, you know, in my opinion, I really feel like the government, and J. Edgar Hoover, is to be exact, was definitely scared of Malcolm X, just terrified of him, also of the Panthers as well. Do you think right now the government fears the movement of Black Lives Matter? Black Lives Matter.
I definitely think they fear it, for sure. They definitely fear it. They fear that. They fear our unity, period, which is what COINTELPRO sets out to stop, is our unity. So no matter what name is under, they fear our progress. Anything that looks like we're moving toward the right direction, the government has a plan to shut it down completely, no matter what it is. They have a plan to shut it down. So they definitely fear it. I definitely think they fear it. And should they? You know, I guess that's a question that we individually have to answer. Do I think it's as far as the Black Lives Matter, I guess for me, I would like to know what's the ultimate goal? You know what I mean? I guess when I think of those words, Black Lives Matter, who are we appealing to is the question. Who are we trying to say that to? Are we saying it to each other? Are we saying it to people who Black lives don't matter to? I mean, I guess the question is, for me personally, is who are we appealing to when we say the Black Lives Matter? I think we have to be careful to understand who our enemy is. And if you know who your enemy is, and I think that might be sometimes the problem, is we might not know who our enemy is. When I say don't know who he is, I don't mean can we identify him directly, what he's wearing, what he looks like, what he's capable of doing. I think when we do that, then we can collectively understand on strategic ways that we can make ourselves better and not really appeal to the enemy to try to get him to accept us as who we are. He's not going to do that. That's just not been his plan since day one. He's an enemy. And if he's an enemy, his goal is to make you see that I don't like you. He's very good at doing that. Our problem should be just as aggressive as his has been to show us that we don't matter, to let him know that he don't matter to us either. I think that's how you defeat the beast, is by letting you ignore him. He's not important. Let's work on us. Let's work on our unity and not worry about trying to appeal to him to let him see that we're important too. Who are we important to? I'm important to myself. You're important to me because you're a brother, just like me. So I don't care what my enemy thinks of us. It's not really that important. What's important is how you feel, how you see me and how I see you. That's what's important to me.
Now, in this last year, America, Black America and white, all America, had seen a resurgence of President Obama, and I think it's some people, he's become this last year the type of president that Black people wanted to see 7 years ago. What's your thoughts on that? On Obama as a whole, his presidency, or some of the things that he have done in favor of Black people. You know, I get in this argument with a lot of people a lot. Some people say it's done a lot over the past couple of years, but I have seen him do a lot of good things this year alone. But what are your thoughts on his presidency, and especially the kind of year he's having?
It's an interesting question. I think for me, because I don't vote, I never have. It's not, I guess, because of the way I was raised. It's always been a proactive thing with me that you make the change that you want. You know, you don't depend on somebody else to do it. But I guess to stick directly with your question, not to deviate from that, I definitely have seen some changes within this last year, like you said, for sure. The changes some people say that they want to see 7 years ago, which we know that he can do 7 years ago, of course, because it would have been probably the shortest presidency in history had he done some of this stuff when he first got in. It would have been over, you know, a long time ago. But for me personally, I've seen the personal changes. I have a younger brother who's been locked up for 16 years for drugs. Well, he's getting out within the next 2 weeks because Obama reversed that ratio of crack cocaine to powder cocaine. What it was 101 ratio, and I think he brought it down to like an 18-to-1 ratio. So I've seen a lot of brothers get released on this, reversing this unfair practices of who determines how long someone goes to prison based on some drugs. So personally, for me, I've seen the changes, and I'm thankful for that. You know what I mean? And not just the personal changes, but just I think recently about 50-something more brothers were just released from prison based on that same thing. So that's a major change for me, because I think that's one of our biggest problems is our numbers have decreased in Black men, especially because the majority of us are locked up. And when that happens, your army is going to be weak. So our vanguard isn't as strong as it should be, because the majority of our soldiers are behind the belly of the beast. So I think once that number has been reversed just a slight bit, that increase our numbers for the vanguard, so we can start protecting our sisters again, start protecting our babies again. But the less of us is out here, the less chance of us going to be able to do that effectively. So in that, I look at that particular thing, and I see that as a very, very good thing, because we know who started that. We know Clinton put that in. He put that in place, you know, with the 3 strikes you're out, and, you know, which everybody tried to call him the quote unquote first Black president because he played saxophones and kissed Black babies in churches. But while he was doing that, you know, it's like the Trojan horse. You know, this is what I'm gonna do over here in public, but over here I'm gonna set y'all up for the prison industrial complex. So to see a brother come in and try to reverse that, I think it's a bold statement. It's a bold move. No matter when it comes, as long as it comes, you know, we can't really call it late no more because it happened. You know, we did see him reverse it. So I'm thankful for that, if nothing else. But I don't put any stock into presidents, state officials, mayors, because I think that the people always have the power. We have the power as people to make things happen for our own selves. So as the Panthers did again, constantly referring back to the Panthers, they started free breakfast programs. They started social programs and health screenings, and they didn't need governments to tell them if they could do it or not. They have found the power within themselves, and they move forward. And they got the trust of the people. And I think that's what we have to do. As Black men, we have to stand up and get the trust of our people. And they start depending on us to call us when their child is out doing something wrong. They'll call on you, Jermaine, I need you to go get my 13-year-old son because he's, you know, he didn't come home last night. They didn't call the police. They call us, you know what I mean? Which is what they're supposed to do in the first place, you know, because the police have never been our friends. So we shouldn't be calling them anyway. Don't know if that got off the question or not, but
No,
yes, I'm thankful for what Obama has done within this last year, for sure. I'm definitely thankful for that.
And like I said before, I already know you're going to have to come back on, because this little time we had today is not going to be enough to cover what I want to cover. But I want to switch gears and ask you more of a candid question. In the past, we have seen biopics of Malcolm X played, you know, by Denzel Washington. They're still talking about this Martin Luther King movie. We have seen Selma, the movie of Selma. We have even seen unsung heroes or trailblazers within, like, The Butler. And also we have even seen, like, some of the small screen, like, made for TV movies, like the movies surrounding Betty Shabazz and Coretta Scott King on Lifetime. We have also seen the fight that Medgar Evers' widow had to go through to convict his assassin. What are some of the biopics you would like to see, you know, that comes out about some of the heroes that we know or don't know?
Well, let me say this first if I can. I'm glad you mentioned that. What we know is that there is no statute of limitations on murder. There's no statute of limitations on that. I think some of these biopics, I'm hoping, have shined some light on the fact that we still really do not know who killed some of these people. You know what I mean? There's still somewhat of some type of conspiracy behind this. So I think the biopics, in my mind, have shown me that we still have work to do. We still need to go out and do some more research and hold people accountable for who they say killed our leaders, but can't produce the proper evidence to show us that these are the people who did it. So I think the biopics serve as somewhat of a challenge for us to say, you know what, I'm not quite sure that who they're telling me killed this person is the one who killed. You know, we know for sure. I think we know we have enough evidence mounted to say that James Earl Ray did not single-handedly kill Martin Luther King Jr.
Right.
I think we have enough evidence to prove that. So,
and, if I'm not mistaken, didn't the government get found guilty recently or something like that with a hand in Martin's assassination? And I don't think it was not broadcast. It definitely wasn't on CNN or nothing, you know, but I really want to say that I seen that. I'm gonna have to double check that, but I believe that the courts did find the U.S. government in the hand. Now, what that proved, and you know, they didn't come out and name names and stuff like that.
Right. But to answer your question, there's a sister named Claudette Colvin. I'm not sure you're familiar with her or not, but Claudette Colvin was the first actual sister who in Alabama, I'm guessing it was Alabama, who didn't give up her seat to a white man on the bus. Claudette Colvin's story has not been told. There's a book about it that came out recently, but Claudette Colvin she worked under Coretta Scott King. I mean, not Coretta Scott, but Rosa Parks. She worked under Rosa Parks. There was Claudette, and then there was another sister that came behind her, but Claudette's story didn't get told because she actually did it. She didn't have to be told to do it. She actually did. She just got frustrated. I think she was like a 14, 15-year-old girl, and she decided, I'm not getting up today. I'm just not going to get up. I'm not going to get out of my seat. She got arrested. You know, NAACP knew about it, but they said, okay, well, she's a 14, 15-year-old girl, and she's from this part of town. It's not time to do that yet. So another sister actually did it, and they came with the same reason. By this time, Rosa Parks got word of it, and everybody rallied around Rosa and told her, why don't you go out and do this, and we're going to protect you. We're going to already have bail money ready, and, you know, and that's fine if it worked, but Claudette's story goes untold, and she was the true hero. She was the true soldier. And she had a son behind it. I think she ended up getting pregnant at 16 and had a son, and they just kind of pushed her to the wayside as if she didn't do anything. These are the stories I want to see told. So these are the biopics I want to see of these unsung heroes who never got their glory, who actually started the movement for the bus boycott in Alabama. There would be no Rosa Parks if it wasn't for Claudette Colvin, but we only know Rosa Parks' story because by that time everybody rallied around her and we started a movement behind it, but we protected her. So it was really no present danger that Rosa Parks was in because the community had already put a plan together based on what Claudette had already done and said, okay, Rosa, you go ahead and do this. You're an older woman. This will work better for you. If we do this, it won't really harm you, or you have prestige in the NAACP, so we can blow this up and take this to another level. With the 15-year-old girl, it can't really blow up. Well, it doesn't matter. She was bold enough to step up and do it on her own because she was tired of the racism she was dealing with. I think Claudette Colvin's story needs to be told. So I would like to see that story put out on the mainstream.
And you know, that's some of the stuff that frustrates me to death, man. It's just like, especially like they already don't teach about us in high school. But if you take up, you know, I took up African American history when I was in high school. I know about Harriet Tubman. I know about Martin Luther King. You know, they weren't there saying nothing about Malcolm X. They little mention a footnote. But you know, I know some of the stories like that story you just mentioned. You know, I know the situation. I didn't know everything that you just said, or even about Paul Revere. You know, they always, around the American Revolution, they always talk about how he warned everybody the British is coming, but there was an African American that went the opposite way of him and warning everybody, but he don't get no kudos or no shine or anything. So, you know, it's a lot of stuff that we are doing. I have even seen some new reports that people are saying Mozart was actually black. I don't know how true it is, but they're really starting to dig in and look into that. So, you know, I think that it's the education, the people that are educating us, you know, it's man, they got a lot of power to teach us whatever they want to teach us. And I think, you know, it's going to take somebody that really wants to know about themselves. And nowadays, you know, people don't really want to know. Yeah, they really don't want to know. Now, my last question.
Well, if I can say this, well, you should, Carter G. Woodson's story. I would like to see his story told. When you mentioned that, Carter G. Woodson, you just mentioned something very intricate, very important. Carter G. Woodson said, when you allow your enemy to educate you, you fall under your enemy's education, brainwashing, basically, so to speak. So when I go around and I teach at the colleges or the high schools around, most people don't know, Black people I'm speaking of, don't know where Black History Month even came from. They think it's something that the government gave us. Carter G. Woodson's name never comes up. So everybody seems to be shocked when you hear that Carter G. Woodson started Black History Week before it became Black History Month. You know, no one knows, so that story needs to be told. Because when we think about education, as you just mentioned, who's educating us? Well, of course, it's not in the enemy's best interest to give me the truth, because then he has to deal with this truth that I have now. Well, if he's watered down my truth and he gives me this fabricated story, he gets to control my mind a lot more. So we have to be careful on who we let educate us. You know what I mean? I don't want my babies being educated by my enemy. You know, whether that enemy be, it's not, I try not to focus on the color thing. It's just America is the enemy. She's always been the enemy. She's the enemy of the world, but she's definitely been an enemy to Black people, of course. So why would I want her to educate my child? You know, she's only going to give her what she wants her to know, not the truth, but what she wants her to know. And that's the difference between what you want me to know and what the truth is. There's a difference. So Carter G. Woodson's story needs to be told as well. I like to see his story as a biopic on TV, in some form or another, on the internet, made for DVD or a big screen. His story, because so many of us don't know how hard this brother championed to give us a Black History Week. Now,
and that's something I didn't even plan on even discussing the link, but I every time you say something, it sparks something in my head, and it sparks. So you have to definitely come back. But I do want to say this
at any time, brother. I'd be willing to come back at any time. This was nothing to get into, so I'd be willing to do this at any time. I promise you, for sure.
Hey, well, I'm glad to hear that. And I live in Jacksonville, Florida, and you know, it's one thing when the enemy does educate your people, but it's another thing that they flaunt the power and letting you know who's in charge, because they got high schools here, Robert E. Lee, Nathan B. Forrest, which is what they just changed it last year, but it took like a lot of years of working. But Nathan B. Cook, which was the first Nathan B. Forrest, which was the first Grand Wizard of the KKK. Yes, and then they have a school here, Jefferson Davis, and we all know the president of the Confederate. So it's just like here in Jacksonville, they letting you know what I'm saying? Like, hey, we educating you, and we're going to name our schools that your people, and you know, like Robert E. Lee and Forrest are predominantly Black schools here, and they're just it's just really a sad situation. It's a sad situation, and I think some of the kids, like, you know, I know when I was younger, I took pride in the school I went to, and I like to rep it. But I went to Booker T. Washington, so you know, these folks rep that. And they were out here, they're like, yeah, I go to Lee, Robert E. Lee, and you know, I'm like, oh man, I hope they know who they're repping, you know, who they're putting on for, because that's he probably rolling in his grave knowing that you're happy that you're affiliated with him, you know.
Right. It's very interesting. So moving here from Memphis, Nathan Bedford Forrest has a park in Memphis. I think they just changed the name of the park, but his statue is still there. Man. So in these cities that are predominantly Black, like you said, they're basically throwing it in our face, shoving down our throats. We honor our heroes of our revolution. We honor ours. You don't even honor yours. To me, it's like they're throwing it in our face, because I just did a Black August event Friday, which Brother Jabril came to, and I'm thankful that he came. Black August is that's our month. You know, that's our month to acknowledge our heroes, our George Jacksons and our Jonathan Jacksons and our Nat Turners. You know, we're supposed to honor our heroes of our revolution, of our freedom. You know what I mean? But we don't do that. So I think once we stop celebrating our enemies' holidays, 4th of July has nothing to do with Black people. We were slaves. If we look at the numbers, 1776, 1865, why are we celebrating the 4th of July? It doesn't make any sense. So we need to stop doing that. We go into Thanksgiving, the history of that, you know what I mean, and what that was about. We don't need to be celebrating that. But our people come with these excuses. Well, I'm not really celebrating. I'm just kicking with my family. Well, you're kicking with your family because your enemy says that you can. Why don't you be a man and step up and say, you know what, I'm going to kick with my family on a Tuesday in September. Because maybe that Tuesday in September might have been a day that Harriet Tubman maybe freed 20 slaves in that one day. That's something to celebrate. Why don't you do that? Why don't you separate from doing what your enemy do and start doing something that your own people need to be doing? And I think that's been part of our problem. So when we look at that, when we look at some of these school names, if they're not going to change it, which is something they really don't have to do, remove yourselves from these schools. Put most of your kids in Booker T. Washington. You know what I mean?
And, you know, and like they say, you know, when you be careful what you name your kids, because that's what they're going to grow to be. Same thing with schools. And like I said, I live in Jacksonville, Florida. The murder rate and the way Black people murder each other is just crazy. But people can't understand why. And I can tell you why, because it's named after Andrew Jackson, and he butchered the Native Americans. He hated Black people. He was the first governor of Florida, and his spirit of murder and hate rims over the city that bears his name.
And you said another key thing, brother. It's a spiritual move. It's that spiritual energy that's still there. It's that energy. That energy is still there. So our children are picking up on that negative energy, and they just passing it along. So to me, when people ask me all the time about this black on black crime, which I don't talk about with outsiders, especially, they're only mimicking what you show them. They're mimicking. When you got a problem with Kuwait, you go over and you send people over and you kill them. That's what you do. When you got a problem with Iraq, you send people over and you kill them. Who you think watching it? Our kids are watching it. They're watching you on the news go over and kill. So when they got a problem with each other, what do? They kill.
That's an interesting point.
You set this off. Yes, we need to fix it, but you set this off. You set this movement in place, and then you gave them the guns to do it. You didn't get their fathers and mothers jobs, but you gave them plenty of guns to go out and kill each other with. It's not a coincidence. It's a planned design. You know what I mean? It's a planned design.
Man, it's been a real pleasure kicking it with you and talking to you, man. Please let the people know if they want to get you for a speaking engagement, they want you to come do some poems, or how to get in touch with you in any way possible. How can they do that?
The phone number is still a Memphis number, Memphis area code 901-212-6695. The email address is stillblackc@gmail.com. That's still STILL, right, SEEBLACKSEE@gmail.
Okay, and I appreciate you coming on. I'm gonna ask you just one last question, because I was interested in hearing your response on this. You know, a lot of people alluded to when Martin Luther King was in jail in Selma, and Malcolm X was sending him telegrams, and even came down to Selma to speak and explain to Coretta that he wasn't here to you know, cause no trouble, but he just wanted to give them the alternative. You should go King route because you don't want to deal with my route. Do you think they would have lived long enough? And I'm not talking like years later, in the next 2 years when Malcolm was assassinated in 65, do you think around 67 you could have seen them two come together?
Oh, definitely. I definitely see that. Because of the history that we see, how Martin changed his speeches. You notice how his speeches changed shortly after Malcolm was assassinated. Martin went from talking, though he might have still been nonviolent, I'm not questioning that, but he got very, very radical when he got to talking about this war. When he got to talking about that war in Vietnam and how this was an unjust war, that's when the government started paying attention and realized that he needed to go next. Because now you're cutting into my money. Now you say, because he was the one, he was the voice of the people. He was the voice. Who can rally more people than King at that time? So now you got King speaking of not being nonviolent, and not to say again like that he wasn't, but when he started attacking this war, this very unjust war, that's when the government started paying attention to what he was doing. That, I think, remember, he had a conversation with Elijah Muhammad. Him and Elijah Muhammad had a conversation shortly after Malcolm was assassinated. Of course, the government keyed directly in on that, on them two coming together. Shortly after, you started hearing speeches about him talking about being black and proud, and there's a speech that I think Dead Prayers used as a clip on one of their songs about I'm black, I'm proud, I'm beautiful. And when you started hearing black, proud, and beautiful coming from King, you know, that's a separation thing from white America to them in their minds. So, of course, I think had they both been around, Malcolm was seeing things in a more global aspect. He was looking at black people globally. You know, when he was bringing the U.S. on charges with the United Nations on the treatment of black people in America.
Right.
That was so forward thinking at that time in the 60s for a man to be doing that. So he said, okay, I'm taking it outside the box of America. I'm looking at this as a global issue. So here comes King changing from just this philosophy of nonviolence and looking at the bigger scope of things like, okay, so it's no matter what we do, no matter how I come, they're still gonna gun us down. I need to look at this thing as more of a global aspect as well. So it seemed like to me the speeches were both leading to them going to somewhat of a crescendo to having a very powerful meeting together.
And you know, they had that speech that surfaced around Facebook for the last 2 years, the King That You Don't Know, and that was one of those speeches that don't get a lot of press, a lot of coverage. And I was blown away because I was, you know, I used to be always used to think of King in a certain light of more of a puppet. That's what I thought at a time. But you know, the more research I did towards the end of his life is because no doubt the American government, the US government wanted King to be the voice of the people because he's telling us to be nonviolent in a situation that needs to be violent. And so no doubt that they wanted him to continue to preach that to us. But as you said, like doing those changes, when I started uncovering some of that stuff, my whole aspect of King changed because it was like, man, you know, he started to take more of a militant front. And yeah, I didn't know that him and Elijah Muhammad met. So I'm pretty sure that had a lot to do with it.
A whole lot to do with it. I want to say something to you real quick, if I can, sir. It's the same King that was presented to you was presented to me. They presented that King to us. I asked a group of students recently, I said, when you think about King, what do you think? Most of them raised their hand and said, you know, he had this powerful speech about the dream. I said, what are you doing when you're dreaming? You sleep. You're not working when you're dreaming. You're sleeping. That's what happens when you're dreaming. I said, so that's the King they wanted to present to us. But it's up to us to go in, like you said, and do what you did and do the research and find out, man, this brother has some very, very powerful speeches. But they would never let most of those speeches get out because that's like you said, the King that you didn't know. It's the King that you didn't know, but he was a very, very powerful leader, no doubt about it. Misguided at some point in time or another, but some people say the same thing about Malcolm. But weren't we all at some point in time probably a little bit misguided? You know, passionate, wanting to do the right thing, but maybe not knowing how to. That's all misguided is. But when you stay focused, you come out of misguided into guided. You know what I mean? So I think they both came out of that and were growing towards some guided, you know, some direction. And I think that's what has to be noted at the end of the day. I want to say this before I get out of here. I appreciate you for what you're doing out there in Jacksonville, brother. I mean, amidst of all, like you said, the violence and everything that's going on and maybe somewhat of the sleep mentality that our people have, it takes people like yourself to do what you're doing to kind of awaken us out of the zombified mentality that we're in. So hopefully 40, 50, 60 years later, after we're all gone, they're going to be reading about people like yourself and the direction that you took in the midst of this war. You chose to stand strong and stand in the middle of it and try to help some people who want, because we can't just assume that all of our people are not trying to wake up. Some of us just don't have a direction. It takes leaders to find followers. You know what I mean? So I think that you're doing the right thing by finding the followers and helping people go through that Underground Railroad, which still exists today, to get us to that fruit that we need. So I appreciate you and what you're doing, sir.
I thank you. That really means a lot. And I feel the same way about you because, you know, you come from that 70s and 80s and, you know, I'm in my 2000s doing it. So I appreciate it, man. I really appreciate it. And I'm scared to say anything else because we're going to be going on for another 2 hours.
I know it. So, but that's how it is when you're passionate about your people, when you love your people, man, and when you're articulate, you can speak about it. It can go on and on. But that's the good thing about knowing that we can come back and bring it back again next week or whenever we need to do it. So whenever you need me, brother, let me know. I'm here. So, and whatever I can do, can I tune in and just find out whoever you got on like a regular basis? Like, what can I do to tune in and find out? Like who you might have somebody else next week. I want to sit in and just watch and listen or whatever I can do. So what I need to do that?
I get Jabril to give you a call, and so that way whenever we do that, he can because my phone I'm ordering a new phone from Amazon. It should be here in the next hour or so. But okay. I get Jabril or myself. We'll call and we'll make sure we let you know when that happens. And also next week, let's do it next week.
Next Monday. Okay, I should be out work next Monday as well. So it's about the same time.
Sound good to me. Hey, we can do this every Monday thing.
Okay, I'm down for it, brother. I'm down for it. So you get your questions together, and I already got my answers, and we make it happen.
Y'all, that's Q, the poet. Support that brother, man. Got a lot of stuff to say. Check out his poetry, man. Big fan of it. I want to thank you again, but as you can see, you're going to see him Monday. Who knows? You might see him every Monday where we can sit down and talk about, because there's so much stuff that we need to uncover and teach to our people. Hey, it might take the every Monday for the rest of our life, and you probably won't even know 25% of what you need to know. I'm Jermaine J. Williams. This is the People's Perspective. Everybody has a perspective, but there's no perspective like the people's perspective. Y'all, thank y'all. I appreciate it.